Hello, Lynn Watts here with Wyatt the Wonder Dog Books. And today, in this video, I'm going to be following up to a previous video that I started talking about the science behind encouragement. And to be specific, I talked in that video about positive comments and how there needs to be a higher ratio of positive to negative comments, and then some ideas for how to actually use positive comments in a way that enhances the behavior that you're looking for. In this video, I'm going to talk about negative comments. And I ended the previous video with this question: are negative comments ever necessary? And the answer is yes. But before I tell you about that and how to use negative, or let's call them constructive feedback or constructive comments in a useful way, I want to tell you about a book I wrote that you can use individually, in small groups, in a classroom lesson, to talk about communication, positive and negative comments. And that's this book, Wyatt the Wonder Dog Learns About Good Manners. And it's really about good manners between friends. And it's also all about negative comments. In other words, there's a problem here between the friends. And Wyatt feels like his friend Max is bossy and rude and kind of pushy. And so he doesn't know what to do about that. So it's all about their conversation that eventually happens once Wyatt figures out that's really what needs to happen, and how to make that constructive in telling him about his behavior that is so annoying and so bossy. So I'd really recommend this book if this is a conversation that you are having with students about their communication and positive and negative constructive comments. So let's talk about negative comments and how to do that to make them constructive and also corrective. So I'm going to just give you several pointers, and then I'm going to tell you how you can use these in different situations. So the first one is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, to focus on the behavior, not the child. But what does that look like? Well, instead of saying something like this, "You're being rude. That was mean. You are mean." That is actually kind of identifying the child as rude and mean and so forth. And while you may actually feel that that's the case, what actually is happening is their behavior is rude or mean or thoughtless or any of these things. All right. And so when we identify the child as being rude or mean, then there doesn't leave as much room for improvement. It's kind of like, that's the way you are, right? However, if it's the behavior, then there's always opportunity to improve and change our behavior. So instead of saying you're being rude, you could say that comment was hurtful. All right, that hurt so-and-so's feelings. Let's talk about a more respectful way that you could express your feelings. Now, the interesting thing is that's actually in the book, not word for word, but that is in the book about Wyatt and good manners, where he says to his friend, good manners isn't just saying please and thank you, it's being respectful of others' feelings. So identifying, focusing on the behavior, and then giving an opportunity for you and the child to think about how could you say that differently, that it would not come across as rude or mean or whatever the problem is. All right, so the next one is to be specific. So many times I think we assume that children know how to improve once we tell them that they're doing something wrong. So if we say you need to do better, you've got to do a better job of anything. You've got to do a better job on the next test. You've got to do a better job of cleaning up your room. That's not really very specific. It just says what you did was wrong, but it doesn't give anybody a clue even as to what to do better. So the more specific you can be, the better chance that the child is going to improve. So next time, remember to, all right, next time, maybe you need to remember to spend more time studying. Next time, maybe you need to remember that you can't shove everything under the bed. You need to put things away in their place. All right. So next time is, first of all, predicting that they're going to do better. And it also is specific in terms of how they can improve. So specificity, I love that word, is giving constructive feedback. You can also pair correction with encouragement. You can say, I know you can do better, or I know you can make a better choice because I remember you did a great job on the last spelling test. I wonder what you did that made that, made you more successful there. So you're giving encouragement, saying you can do this. You've done it before. And now let's talk about what it takes to do it again. So pairing correction with encouragement. We always want to maintain the dignity of the student, the child. So kids are, just like adults, more receptive when corrections are made privately rather than in front of a whole group, in front of the whole classroom. So a lot of times if you can talk before or after class or out in the hall, or let's talk in your room, whatever it takes, so that there's an opportunity just one-on-one. So it's not that you're calling someone out in front of a whole group, which of course, then you're saving face and you're helping them to be in a position where they don't have to act out because they feel like, what the heck, everybody thinks I'm a loser anyway. So maintaining dignity is important. And then the last thing is to end with hope. And that is to, through this corrective feedback, to let the child know that you do have hope, that you expect things are going to get better. So letting them know that everybody makes a mistake sometime, and this mistake doesn't define, it's not who you are. Mistakes are something that we all make before we learn something or successful. Or another great way to do it is, let's work on a plan for next time. All right. So always, working on next time. What are you going to do next time? How's this going to look next time? So you're helping them anticipate that this isn't one and done. There's another test coming up next week. There's another opportunity to lose your temper next week. So let's make a plan for the future. So talking about the future is always a helpful way to make corrective feedback. When can you use these practical applications? I think obviously you're in counseling, that you're going to have a chance to do it over and over. You can do it in individual counseling. And what do you want to do there? I think you want to, first of all, highlight strengths. So as much as possible, even when you're working with somebody, because you and they both know the reason they're coming to see you is there's this problem that's really creating all kinds of issues. You want to begin with highlighting strengths. I see that you're really, a good student. I see that you really work hard. I see that you I see that you've done such a great job at, helping other people feel successful or making friends, whatever. Find some strengths that you can talk about. Recognize effort and progress. I see you're making an effort. I know you're trying hard, that sort of thing. And then you want to celebrate those small successes. You can do all those same things in small groups. You can do it in classroom lessons. You can add a few other things, though. So in small groups, you may have the opportunity, especially if the whole group is working on a similar kind of situation, you have peers that can support each other, recognize when each other are making progress and effort, and give positive encouragement to each other. And that can be very powerful. In fact, that can be more powerful than you saying what a great job they're doing. So you want to create opportunities and also teach kids how to provide support to each other. I think that's a really important skill to learn. In classroom lessons, of course, you want to maintain a good role model using positive language, positive encouragement, acknowledging student engagement, and use strength-based examples as much as possible. This is also really important when you're working with adults. So it's helpful with adults to teach them these same techniques to help them begin from the point of view of strengths and positivity. And then when it's necessary to use constructive or some negative based feedback, how to do that with some of the things that I have just talked about in terms of being specific and sometimes building them within sort of a sandwich of positivity, recognizing strengths, and so on. So I hope this is helpful and gives you some ideas for ways that you can use constructive feedback, not only in a school setting, but anytime that you are working with children. And as always, thanks for all the wonderful things you do to enhance students' lives. And thanks, as always, for listening.